In these problems, we're dealing with roots of numbers, and you have probably dealt with square roots before. So if you saw something like this, with this radical sign over the 16, you'd know that's the square root of 16, and you probably know that equals 4. And when we do a square root, we're asking ourselves really what number, if you multiply it by itself, equals 16. And yeah, it's fairly easy to figure out in your head, or maybe you just use the square root button on your calculator. That's fine too. But you can put other little numbers up here that denote something slightly different. This really you could think of as putting a 2 up here. This is the square root. But you can have the cube root of something and put a little 3 up here. And let's say, oh, I'm just going to pick 8 because that's an easy number. Here, in this square root, we asked ourselves, what do you multiply by itself twice to get that number? Here, we're asking, what do you multiply by itself 3 times to get that number? And 2 times 2 times 2 equals 8. So the cube root of 8 is 2. So sometimes that's a tricky concept to get in your head to begin with. And I think it's useful to write some notes about this. Actually, I'm skipping the problem here. We didn't do this one first. But let me write some handy notes here. So 2 squared is 4. 2 to the third power is 8. 2 to the fourth power is 16. And you could verify that on your calculator. Multiply 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, you get 16. Let's do this for 3's as well. 3 squared is 9. 3 to the third power is 27. Let's just leave it there. I don't think we need to go any further with that one. And then 4 squared is 16. And 4 to the third power, 4 times 4 times 4, that's 64. And maybe we'll stop there as well. These are some basic powers of the first few numbers here. That'll be handy if you memorize them, that's great. If you have them written down in your notes so you can access them easily, that's great too. And the thing to remember here is when we go in this direction, we're raising to a power. If we go back in this direction, we're taking the root. So if you want to know the fourth root of 16, it's 2. If you want to know the third root of 8, it's 2. The square root of 4, 2. So if somebody gave you a problem where you had, the cube root of 64, well, here's 64. 64 is 4 to the third power, so the cube root of 64 is 4. The only tricky part here is the negative sign. What happens with that? Well, you're only going to see negative signs under odd powers of the root, odd roots. So, and when that happens, you keep the negative. So this one, the cube root of 64 is 4. The answer is going to be negative 4. If you want to verify that by going backwards, you would take negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4 and find out that it does equal a negative 64. All right, that may be a little confusing. Let's try a couple problems to see if we can solidify this knowledge. Here, first, we have negative 3 squared. So that's negative 3 times a negative 3. That is a positive 9. Negative times a negative is positive. And then we have the cube root of 27. Well, if I look up in my notes, 3 cubed is 27, so the cube root of 27 is going to be 3. So that is 9 plus 3, or 12. Let's try one more. This one's a lot more tricky, but really if we take this step by step, there's nothing we can't solve here. First of all, we have a 2 squared. It's important to differentiate between when the negative sign is inside parentheses, like here, or not. If it's not, you definitely want to write that negative sign first, then square the 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. Then we have a negative sign, and then this chunk. Negative 2 squared. Well, that's negative 2 times negative 2, so that's going to be a positive 4. And then we have another negative sign, and then we have negative 2 to the fourth, so that's negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. The value is going to be 16. It's going to be a positive 16. Anytime you raise a negative number to an even power, it's going to be a positive result. So that's just 16. Then we have some roots. So first of all, we have the cube root of 8. If I look back up at my notes, I notice that 2 cubed is 8, so the cube root of 8 is going to be 2. So that's 2. And then we have a minus sign, and then we have the fourth root of 16. I know that 2 to the fourth is 16, so the fourth root of 16 is 2. All right, I think we've got everything we need to calculate this problem. So I've got -4 minus 4, that's a -8, minus 16, that is -24. Oops. And then I've got a positive 2 minus 2. Oh, well, those just add up to 0. So -24 plus 0 is just -24. So that is a little bit of work with some roots.